flour, medical aid, and other products. More than 24 people have already reportedly starved to death in Madaya since December. Well, for more now on the situation there, I'm joined by our regional correspondent, Adam Pletz. Adam, what more can you tell us about this second convoy going in so far?
Well, this is part of the original planned aid. It's the second phase of that operation. Very similar to the first one, it's bringing in much-needed food aid, blankets and other goods for the winter, as well as hygiene products. And at the moment, the convoy is on the edges of the town of Madaya. There's two reasons why it hasn't entered yet. The first is that several vehicles go in ahead just to speak to town representatives to plan how they're going to disperse that aid, where it's going to be stored and so on and so forth, but also because these operations are done in synchronization. So you have one convoy going to Madaya and a second one which has gone much further and traveled much further up into the north to Idlib, and they have to enter those towns at the same time. So they'll be waiting until until they can both enter synchronized. Now, the contents of the aid convoy, they've included, as was requested specifically, a large amount of flour because people simply haven't been eating bread for months on end. And speaking to the spokesperson at the ICRC early on, he said very often the first question that people asked them was simply, do they have a piece of bread? And when he was there with the first convoy that went in, and they were told, he told me rather, that after the first 4 vehicles entered the town, you could see the anxiety on the faces of people there because they feared that this was all that was going to come, and they knew that simply 4 vehicles weren't going to be enough to feed the some 40,000 affected people there. And of course, it was great relief when they eventually saw 40 trucks coming in, further 40. And now that there's this second convoy, you can imagine that people in that affected area will now begin to be slightly more relaxed and reassured of their safety and security.
Yes, but Adam, is this enough? Is this a good sign for the future, the recovery of these people who are starving there?
Well, so long as they're able to continue delivering aid, as the spokesperson of the ICRC just put it to me, one-off deliveries are never going to be enough. You have to be able to deliver sustained aid. And it's not just Madaya that's affected. The ICRC, as have other bodies, put out a call yesterday to end the sieges in Syria, or if not that, at least to allow aid into them. And of course, the agreement that was struck in Madaya was a political one. The ICRC weren't part of it anyway. It was a political agreement between the opposite parts of the opposition and the government to allow this aid in. However, the ICRC, as other international bodies, they see this, international aid organizations, they see this as a positive step, a good example, and it also demonstrates that aid can be delivered to these hard-to-access places. And although Madaya may have been one of the worst affected places, perhaps at this very time, the worst affected places, there are many others like it. So you have 400,000 other people in similarly besieged areas, and then you have a further 4 million people in hard-to-reach areas. So in some respects, the situation in Madaya is just the tip of the iceberg. And what international aid bodies would like to see is more cooperation from all sides in the Syrian conflict to allow them to access these areas so that they can bring sustained delivery of aid rather than these kind of one-off deliveries, which even the likes of the operation we've seen in Madaya has not been able to happen very frequently, purely because access hasn't normally been given.
All right, Adam, thank you for that. That's Adam Pletz, our regional correspondent reporting from Beirut.